You may be wondering where the coconut pecan frosting went for this German chocolate bundt cake. Well, guess what? It's a secret, and it's hiding out right in the center. And you won't believe how easy it is to make. Just watch.
I'm Greg, and you're watching The Slice. This unique take on German chocolate cake flips the script on the classic. The frosting becomes a surprise filling inside. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Spread 1 cup pecans onto a rimmed baking sheet in a single layer, and toast until nutty and fragrant.
These toasted pecans are now cooled, and you can see they've darkened beautifully. And in this case, we want to give this a very fine chop. Since this is going to be folded into our frosting filling, it's important not to have any big chunks. You could certainly do this in a food processor. I like to do just about as much as I possibly can by hand, as you know if you've been watching the series. And wow, you really get the fragrance of them as you chop them here. That's looking pretty good, so we can set these aside, and now it's time to cook our filling.
In a saucepan, stir together 1 cup sweetened cream of coconut, 1 1/4 cups shredded unsweetened coconut, and 2 tablespoons of flour.
We want this to come to a boil, and we need to activate that flour. That flour is what's going to help keep this filling homogeneous and together as it sinks down into our gorgeous chocolate cake. I'm going to actually crank this up. You really want this to come to a boil. You can see that's happening very fast. Like I said, it's easy, easy, easy. And those chopped nuts can go in. See how many I spill. I'm really good at that game. And all that nut dust there I want too. That's a lot of flavor in that. Okay, give that a quick stir. That is done. See how that's tightened up? And it's mounding and holding its shape. You can turn that off now. And we want this to cool down completely before we use it. So I'm gonna transfer it out of this pot and into a bowl. Scrape out every last bit of that beautiful filling. Yum. I could just eat that with a spoon, but I guess I have to use it later, so hold tight on this and then we'll make the cake. Batter up, but first we have to prepare our pan. So you can use softened or melted butter and brush it all in the insides of the pan, all the way to the very top, because this cake is going to rise quite a bit as it bakes. You should also have your oven preheating at this point. You certainly don't want to have batter sitting around in a pan while you're waiting for your oven to get hot. I can hear mine now doing its thing. Very important too, when you're prepping a pan like this, no clumps of butter. Any butter clumps are gonna leave holes in your cake, and they're not so attractive. So just a thin film in every nook and cranny. Now the flour. You might be wondering why flour instead of cocoa powder for a chocolate cake. There's a very important reason in this case, and it's really only aesthetic, but these are the things that we care about at Martha. We wanted a nice contrast with the dark chocolate glaze that goes over the finished cake. So if you use flour, you have a lighter colored chocolate cake to contrast with the dark fudgy ganache frosting. And same with the flour. Just really bang it out. You don't want any excess flour disrupting your beautiful cake. So that's ready to go. And now for the batter.
Stir together 2 tablespoons distilled white vinegar and 3/4 cup room temperature milk.
You could certainly use buttermilk. I never have it, so I always just make my own. It's the same concept. This needs to sit for about 5 minutes until it thickens and curdles. You can see it's already starting to happen. But in the meantime, we can combine our dry ingredients.
Whisk together 2 cups unbleached all-purpose flour, 3 tablespoons of Dutch processed cocoa powder, 1 1/4 teaspoons kosher salt, and 1 teaspoon of baking soda.
Baking soda is going to react with the acidity in our soured milk. And we're just whisking these vigorously for about 20 to 30 seconds. You really want to aerate this flour mixture and combine everything evenly. We used to do this with a sieve or a sifter, but we changed to whisking several years ago in the test kitchen. We found that this was an easier and more effective way to do it. Sometimes cocoa powder can tend to clump a little bit, particularly if you're in a slightly humid environment. So that's another reason to very thoroughly whisk this. That is looking good. Now for the mixer. I'm using a stand mixer, but if you're old school and you have the handheld with the beaters, that works just as well. And It's a little cold in here today, so I want to really make sure that butter is soft. The machine will actually soften the butter more. And in this case, it's particularly important because you want a really light, fluffy, aerated batter so that the filling sinks into the middle.
Combine 1½ sticks of unsalted butter at room temperature with 1¼ cups sugar on medium speed until pale and fluffy. That'll take about 2 to 3 minutes.
Now, this is a good moment to show you. See how this butter is sort of clumpy right now, this butter and sugar mixture? That's because it is a little cold, but it will incorporate. It will get paler in color and probably about double in volume. Whenever you're mixing, a rubber spatula like this is your best friend. Scrape everything back into the bottom of the bowl because we want all of it to be thoroughly incorporated for the cake, and we'll just carry on doing this. This could take 1 minute, 5 minutes. It really just depends on the speed and power of your mixer and also the temperature of your ingredients. Okay, and then with the motor on medium-low speed, I'm gonna add the eggs one at a time. You don't wanna add them all at once. And I'm notorious for getting shell into everything, so I always like to crack the egg into a bowl first and then dump it into your machine. And that way you're just taking that extra step to ensure that you're not gonna leave a surprise crunchy bite for anybody in your cake. So let that first egg incorporate and tip in the next one. And the last.
Then beat in 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract.
And then the flour mixture is going to alternate with the soured milk. And let me just show you how that has, see how that's gotten nice and thick? Oh yeah. Spoon a little bit at a time, otherwise it's going to fly up into your face. You should be on a medium-low speed here. We also don't want to overbeat this batter once the flour mixture is in. That can inhibit rise. Okay. Tap that last bit in. And I like to scrape down one more time here. Oh, I forgot the buttermilk. It's A-okay, it'll still work just beautifully. Watch. Do this in batches if you're less forgetful than I am. Okay, that'll be just fine. Now what I'm gonna do is, I wanna really scrape down this paddle, so I'm actually gonna take it off for a second. It's much easier that way. I can anchor it better with my hands. And again, scrape down the side of the bowl, all the way to the bottom, because you can see there's unmixed butter mixture down at the very bottom there. Every stand mixer in the world does this. I don't know why. One of life's mysteries. And then, one more ingredient to go in. Of course, that cocoa powder only gets us halfway to chocolatey realness. Some melted and cooled chocolate will get us all the way there.
Beat in 5 ounces melted semi-sweet chocolate.
Use my scraper again, get all of that out of the bowl. Ooh yeah. Now that is a beautiful, beautiful looking batter. Now we get to build and bake. The batter is beautiful and fluffy and light. We have our prepared pan and our cooled coconut pecan filling. So let's get this batter in first. You could certainly spoon this in. I'm living on the edge, as I like to do, and just eyeball it once it's in the Bundt pan. Just take your time, get every last drop in there. You can use your offset spatula to flatten. Just like that. And now, the channel of frosting. I love these ice cream scoops for this. You could use 2 spoons. The key is you really want the filling evenly distributed in a ring all the way around the top center of that batter. And as the Bundt cake is in the oven, it's gonna bake up around that filling, and the filling is gonna sink right to the middle. It's important that you keep that border of batter around the outside and center tube of the pan so that all of your filling is right there in the middle of the cake, like a wonderful surprise when you cut into it. Now, this bad boy is ready for the oven. Don't forget to set your timer.
Let cool in the pan set on a wire rack for 20 minutes. Then invert the cake and let it cool completely.
Our cake is cooled and ready to be glazed. And since this is chocolate on chocolate on chocolate, we're going to glaze with what is a ganache. And ganache may seem fancy sounding, but really, just good quality chocolate and heavy cream. If you have a really good melting chocolate or couverture chocolate is the very best used by the pros. That's what you want here. You do not want to use chocolate chips or other kinds of chocolates that have waxes and gums and stabilizers in them, because that's not going to give you that luscious, smooth, pourable ganache icing that we're looking for. Okay, and I like to just lift this up with a bench scraper. It makes it really fast and easy. We're not actually cooking the chocolate. Good quality dark chocolate like this has a fairly low melting point, so just the scalding hot cream is enough, and a little bit of time is all it takes to make it happen. So watch, we pour that cream right over. This isn't looking like much just yet. Gently stir, working from the center. Why are we stirring here and not whisking? For something like this, if you whisk it, you're going to incorporate air, and that air could create bubbles on your icing when it sets, and it's not so attractive. So for the sake of beauty, which is important, we eat with our eyes first. Just gently stir it, and it's like magic. Look at that, there it goes. And just the heat of that cream was enough to give this chocolate a melt. Now, depending on the temperature of your cream and the kitchen, you may need to let this sit for a minute or two, or even up to 10 minutes. This wants to be pourable, but not too loose, or it's just all gonna run right off your cake. Now, if you're a novice ganache pourer, you could transfer this into a wet measure or other cup with a spout, but that's just another dish for me to wash, so I'm gonna pour right from the bowl. Starting from one end, just pour right over the top center, and all the way around. Working quickly, scrape all that excess out of the bowl. We don't want to waste any of this ganache. And you can shake it, you can pound it. See that? It all just smoothed out beautifully, just like that. Not hard, so tasty, can't wait. But first, before we cut into it, we want this ganache frosting to set a bit. 30 minutes if you can wait that long. You could certainly leave it for several hours. I'm just gonna walk away from it or I'll be too tempted. Our gorgeous ganache icing is set, and it's time for the big reveal. Are you ready? I like to use a serrated knife here. I find you get cleaner cuts, and I always wipe my knife between every slice. That just ensures that you get the cleanest possible piece of cake on every single plate. Oh yeah. What more could you want in a cake? We have chewy, sweet coconut, crunchy pecans, and a tender, rich, chocolatey cake with that luscious, silky icing on top. You are definitely gonna wanna make this one at home, I promise. Wow.